Welcome to the Lempert Report live from the National Restaurant Association show floor. Now, this is a very special show. Over 50,000 people come here from all over the world to see what's next in food service. But we're going to have a little twist on that. We care about food service, but we care about food service that, frankly, is in the supermarket. With me is Don Fitzgerald. I go back with Don 35 years, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And when he was at Dominic's, and really, along with Bob Mariano, created, in my opinion, the best restaurant experience ever. That was at Mariano's. And basically, there's nobody smarter as it comes to food service, restaurants, and retailer than the guy next to me. Now, he's the lead of the Partnering Group's retail commerce practice. His focus is on accelerating client revenue and earnings growth through retail best practices, reinvention, and competency training. He's also an adjunct professor at DePaul University here in Chicago. Don, welcome to the Lempert Report.
It's a pleasure to be here, Phil. Enjoy all the years we've had together.
Yes, me too. So let's get started. Number one, what's a grocerant? And why is that important for traditional supermarket retailers to be involved with?
Yeah, well, I think when you use the term grocerant, there's really a continuum there. At the far end, as you mentioned earlier, what we had done back in the day at Mariano's was probably the extreme, or there's some other players out there now that we see doing that has a broad prepared foods, home meal replacement, sit down, in-store restaurants inside of the grocery store. And then on a smaller scale, there's those who have varying degrees. It's very important. I think it's becoming even more important given the economic climate that we're in terms of being able to offer the consumer affordable, high quality solutions for their family. If you look at, we're in the restaurant show, so maybe this is a little blasphemous, but if you look at what's going on in terms of the cost, the experience, fees on DoorDash, labor, absolutely. All those are affecting this industry. And it really provides an opportunity for supermarkets to not take all that business, but provide families maybe a lower cost, high quality alternative to going out to a restaurant or ordering it.
So, what would you say to a grocery retailer who hears us, says, okay, I'm going to head to Chicago for the restaurant show. We still have another 2 days left to find out what the latest trends are. What do you say to them if they say, I'm just not in the restaurant business? It's a different business. And, I remember the days when Mariano's first started, you brought in culinary professionals that were in the restaurant business, but that must have been expensive.
Yeah, well, it definitely, there was an investment there. And I would tell those grocers coming in, you're in the food business. Restaurants are food, grocery is food. You're vying for that same share of the consumer's dollar. And I think that you don't have to go from 0 to 60 overnight. As you walk around here, there's pieces, there's components, there's things that you can try to enhance that experience for the customer and not go all the way to the grocerant right away, but know who your customers are and know where those opportunities. The grocery industry, just like the restaurant industry, continues to get impacted from all sides. And I think this prepared foods, this grocerant, is one of the last moats grocers really have to try to protect themselves. As there's erosion in the center of the store. Why do I get up and go to a grocery store? I can order Amazon and have it right here. I think it gives the opportunity for additional trips, but also food is, as we've talked so many years, food is an emotional, personal business. Yep. And this gives these grocers an opportunity to make that connection. There's loyalty programs and there's loyalty because I like coming to your store. So I think it's crawl, walk, run. Look at one of those where those opportunities are. And no, it doesn't mean you're going to throw out your core business of grocery, but how can this be an enhancement to what you're doing?
And the next step, I remember you and Bob, the first time I came to a Mariano's, walking around and saying to me that what you guys really wanted was people to grab a glass of wine and go up and down the aisles and do their grocery shopping. That's loyal. That really, sets the stage for a great shopping experience.
For sure, and we'll probably talk AI, and they could probably tell us what the correlation is between wine consumption and the size of the
Right,
basket.
right.
But no, I think, there's shore and explore. There's functional shopping and there's discovery. And depending on where you want to be in that spectrum, to for mom to have an hour away to, visit the store, slow down a bit, or a couple goes and has a glass of wine and has some sushi or something else that they enjoy. It creates that experience and you're part of the community as opposed to just necessarily a functional shop.
Our guest today is Don Fitzgerald. Storied career as it relates to grocery, as it relates to grocerants, and we're finding out why supermarkets should be coming here to the National Restaurant Association show to see what the future is. Now, one of the futures that I'm seeing, Don, as I've walked around the show,
Yep.
was a lot of robotics.
Yeah.
Machines that can flip hamburgers and
Right.
automatic fry makers. Should a grocery retailer be looking at that, or should they be going for a more personalized service?
I think they should be doing both, quite frankly. But you mentioned a minute ago, Phil, the labor component. It's in the food business, we need people. So the AI replacing everybody, no, it's a people business. But what are the things that I can do as a retailer back in the house, things the customers don't see that can help me be better in the front of the house, right? So if I can get consistency in those patties, I can get consistency because of the challenges with labor, it helps my deliverable to the consumer. And so I think using that robotic and technology, front side, but backside, where you can refocus that constrained labor on having a great experience and delivering you a great product.
So tell us a little bit about the consulting practice. What do you all do for grocery retailers, in particular, any that want to get into the food service business?
Sure. Yeah. The partnering group is a boutique consulting firm. We've got 100+ partners in the group. And the unique thing is that so many of them are like me. They are practitioners. And so they've walked in the shoes of a lot of the folks that we're working with. And we work with major retail brands, major consumer brands, and help them develop what their brand strategies are. We look at supply chain optimization. If you look at costs continue to rise, right? And we hear about supply chain a lot now and safety in the supply chain. We'll work with retailers on how to develop the supply chain, but also department and category reinvention. How do you differentiate yourself and from in a category? And we do that on the brand side, CPG brand, but also with retailers. What is the next iteration of a particular category? Or how do I go back to your earlier question? If I'm a grocer who comes to this store and mildly inspired, where do I start? How do I put a strategy together? What's my plan? Where are my milestones? What are the costs associated with? Because, and we'll talk probably a little bit, Phil, just the incremental cost of this type of business is something you really got to understand. So the partnering group is really steeped on both sides of the equation. But I think the key thing is we have so many folks who've done it and understand and have, like myself, you have made a lot of mistakes. You give us confidence, but I could show you the scars, and you have to make some of those mistakes on a learning curve.
One of the things that I was very surprised at in the past year is Hy-Vee had become the number one franchisee for Mark Wahlberg's Wahlburger
Yep.
chain,
Yes.
and they converted all their market grills to Wahlburgers. Then, about 6, 7 months ago, they went back to market grill. So, what's the advantage for a grocery retailer to get a franchise or to do it themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. The franchise gets you there quickly. It gets you practices. It gets you policies through state sanitation, supply of goods, and you bring a competency in with you. However, it doesn't necessarily build your brand, right? It's an add-on to your brand. In the case of a Hy-Vee, I don't know for sure, but I believe they're probably thinking, well, we want to continue to build the Hy-Vee brand and all the things under this big top of Hy-Vee that we can bring you. And We don't necessarily need to be building nothing disparaging about Wahlburgers, but it's Hy-Vee, and we wanna bring you our products and our brands and create that loyalty, and so I think it's a decision. I think that's not a bad approach to start to get you in there and get that learning, and then you can make that migration. Or some folks might wanna stay there, but I think depends on the retailer's go-to-market strategy, and under the umbrella, if you wanna build these brands, I think less franchising is where folks.
So at the height of grocerants, and this is pre-pandemic, obviously, when the pandemic hit, a lot of people had to close their grocerants. Some have reopened, some haven't reopened. So, for example, in Southern California, where I am with Gelson's, they had made a deal with Wolfgang Puck, but Wolfgang Puck is no longer there. Um, so, how much of a challenge and how much homework does a grocery retailer need to do before they, start this process? Does it really start with understanding their shoppers and, where their shoppers want to eat their food?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of homework to be done here, right? So measure twice, cut once, and understand who your customer is now. And who are you going for? Am I, as a grocery customer, your target, or am I going to get someone completely different who's not even in my store anymore? So understanding the consumer universe and the competitive set. When you mentioned Gelson's and Wolfgang Puck, now you're competing with other pizza restaurants. So your span of competition gets a lot greater as well. So I think doing that work, and as I mentioned a minute ago, really understanding the cost components of what you're trying to do, and frankly, where things can get lost, right? You and I might like our pizza different just as individuals.
Right.
Well, now we're making those pizzas, and I'm loading up the sausage because I'm an Italian.
Right.
I'm a Chicagoan, and I like Italian sausage. You might like it a little thinner. So having consistency and understanding your specs and adherence to those specs and what are we going to do to put in place to understand that is very critical, because you may think at the margin line, I'm making 70%, but then down in that contribution, you really need to understand that. So to answer you directly, a lot of homework would be necessary. And you can, again, crawl, walk, run into this business, right? Like, there's a finish line. Let's just get to the 10-yard line right now and try this. Get some reaction from our customers.
So when Schnucks got into the grocerant business, they built this beautiful grocerant next to the deli. They had white tablecloth restaurants. They had music party and Saturday nights, and they had valet parking. Didn't last very long. What went wrong?
Yeah. I think there are certain spots in the country where you can do that maybe as a one-off, and you and I can think of other folks who have done that and done this successfully. But there is a heavy incremental cost associated with what you just described. The labor content, the menu that needs to be ready, all the additional staffing, equipment that's associated with that. And if you're in the business, you have to be in the business. Now, we do see restaurants, are closed on Monday, maybe, but that's something that you're doing 6, 7 days a week, all day long, and you've got heavy fixed and variable costs associated with that. So, yeah, I think there's select spots where you can get that done, but otherwise, I think it's kind of a different universe. It's also a different consumer mindset too, in terms of, for that experience, I'm not sure that there's a real connection necessarily.
So in my neck of the woods, Erewhon
Yeah.
does a fabulous job. Obviously, very upscale, very overpriced. They go the route of celebrity smoothies for $20. You're selling strawberries, a single strawberry for $20 and so on. Is that the solution? I mean, they're packed all the time. And Tony and Taki's making, I would assume, a lot of money doing this. Is that the right model, or is it, more mainstream, going back to the days where Kroger was selling rotisserie chickens and you would sit at little Formica booths?
Yeah, I think what you asked earlier in terms of knowing your customer, knowing your competition would drive that answer, right? If I'm in LA, if I'm in Santa Barbara, if I'm in. Erewhon has talked about going other places for a number of years. Hasn't done that
Yep.
yet. For all I know, they may be in process, but I think that's right for that consumer and with that disposable income. Interesting. The CEO of Costco was here at the Economic Club of Chicago this week, and he talks about pizza and hot dogs and how they've been consistent at delivering that. That might be right for them. Now, that's not a grocer on, but that's understanding who your customer is and what they're looking for. So I have the greatest respect for Erewhon. But I think that is also a moment in time, and it's really doing that homework again and understanding who your customer is.
So talking about hot dogs, behind us, and I don't know if everybody can see it. You really can't, but
Yeah.
Spam has come out with a hot dog.
Right.
A lot of PR about Spam's hot dog.
Yep.
What do you think?
I don't know the life cycle of that product, but I think it's very interesting. I think it's a nice innovation. I think there is, you know, uh, renewed interest in Spam. My middle daughter lives in California, went to Hawaii, came back and discovered Spam, right? So it's like, that's very interesting to me. It was one of the first categories I ever bought when I was a young buyer. So I think that's interesting innovation, and customers are looking for that, and I think we see these disruptor brands that get to disruptor brands and items that come in, and it again I think shifts a little bit from that functional shop to, oh, this is different, a little bit of exploration, discovery. I think time will tell, but I think I kind of like it. I like the idea.
So, if you wanted to put a hot dog stand in a Mariano's,
Yep.
would you do a Spam hot dog?
Hmm. That's a really good question. You know what I might do? I might have my mainline, my brand hot dog stand, and then maybe do an LTO, a limited time offer on a Spam dog, and see what. Again, this
Mhm.
is back to your point, doing your homework and your research. What's the reaction to that? And then if if it's good, then I think I'd have a conversation with Hormel back and say, okay, how do I how do I differentiate this a little bit from everything else that I'm seeing else? And that's kind of where, the retailers are creative folks. How can we partner on this? But I think I would first back to like the question of Walmart. I'd have Fitz's dogs, and establish that and then LTO and see what the customer says about the spam ban.
So
But I
for
put ketchup on my hot dog, and
oh
that's
no,
a
no,
sin.
no, no, no.
That's-
See, being a New Yorker, I either want the hot onions
oh,
or mustard and sour cream.
oh boy,
You know,
no, that's a bitch.
I don't know if I've ever had ketchup on a hot dog.
It's a big debate.
It's
Yeah.
so. Um, let's go back to differentiation. It's important to know your customer, obviously.
Yeah.
But again, going back to what a lot of grocery retailers are doing that I see, whether it's buying a franchise or whatever else, doesn't it become too vanilla? One of the things that I remember and really was very impressed with Mariano's, what you were able to do there is you had, the different restaurant stands,
Yes.
but very localized.
Right. Yeah, that was intentional. We developed a lot of those brands ourselves, so that whether it was the smoothie brand, the sushi brand, the barbecue brand, it was for that discovery that I can go to this store and find these local sometimes. Otherwise, we would just created it, but um, it was another reason to get customers into the store. If I would have put the Pizza Hut and McDonald's, a Portillo's hot dog, which is a great hot dog, speaking of it, there's dozens of those around the city, right? And in the suburbs. If it's my dog and you can only get it there and it's under this big top that we created, then it's another reason for customers to get to the store. And part of this whole grocer reason for being is I want to get you in to have that glass of wine and then shop the rest of my store, which is the beauty of this whole equation is you've got that whole rest of the store that you can sell to customers. And boy, how do I tie those together, right?
Right.
So how do I have these products over here in my produce department or this wonderful cheese, and now I have that in my, cheese pub burger, and you can buy both. So I give you the choice. You can come here and have it hot and warm and sit in and have a beer and have your burger. I can grill it for you, which we were doing the time. You could take that home and do it, or you can buy that high quality meat and cheese and do it yourself, depending on what you want to do at that moment in time. Which I think that's for grocers, it gives the customer a lot of choices.
So what I'm hearing from you is, as we look at food and we look at customers, it really has to be a very holistic experience.
Yeah.
It has to be every touch point that there is, whether it's cooking at home, eating in a restaurant, eating in a restaurant, takeout, eating at the office. You want every dollar that customer is paying for food.
Yeah, because grocers are under attack at every corner. We've got Amazon, we've got all the online, and the business. You know, it's chipped away, chipped away, chipped away. I've got these fixed facilities. I've got 50,000 square foot stores that had you know aisles of canned food and cereal when we weren't thinking about GLP-1s,
Right.
and we weren't being eroded by Amazon. So how can I use this frequency of trips, getting into the store, selling you the meal tonight or for later, and then also getting you to shop the rest of the store, which is a real opportunity for grocers to use it for the dollar right now. But then, how do I get you to shop the rest? How do I create frequency? How do I when you think about it, Phil, the margins that grocers hopefully are watching, let's not put get tighter and tighter in the store. This is a margin opportunity to help offset that as well.
So you mentioned early on the economy,
Yeah.
that it's tough for people. Food prices are going up. Food prices will probably continue to go up because of climate change, because of tariffs, because of the war in Iran. I mean, just the list is endless. So how does the supermarket enter the restaurant, prepared foods business with all those challenges there? Do they have to be cheaper than the restaurant? Do they have to be cheaper than McDonald's?
Um, I don't think they have. Well, yeah, McDonald's prices are certainly
Yes, they've gone
scaled.
up.
You're right, and I mean,
It's when I worked in
yeah,
McDonald's when I was in high school, and nobody's going to believe this. I guarantee. 99 cents. You got a Big Mac, fries, and a drink.
well,
99 cents.
we won't ask the date on
No,
it.
don't ask the thing.
But I think we don't have to be cheaper, but I would say you have to provide, cliche as it may sound, more value. So what is that value, right? So, the price, quality that you get, the time that you save, the reward as the person who's providing a meal at home from bringing a meal that people enjoy, right? You bring me a McDonald's, like you're saying, and not to disparage, but or a nice high quality meal from the store that feels a little healthier. It's not such a rush fast food experience. Not that there isn't occasions where it needs to
Mhm.
be, but I think it's the grocerant needs to think about the total value that you bring to your offering versus your competition. Clearly, you are now having grocers are used to price checking the grocer down the store
Right.
or online. Now you have to understand that universe and frankly get into the mindset of the consumer when they're in a restaurant thinking about what's the reference price there. Well, we know the reference price Tide. What's the reference point on coffee? What's the reference point ham? And so I don't think you have to be the cheapest, but you have to provide value. And I think at this moment in time, if you think about Phil, if we sat here now and ordered a restaurant, a DoorDash order here with the delivery charges, the ups, what we could
And the
do
tip.
and the
And
tip versus what we could do at one of the retailers we mentioned, um, I think it's a great value. And so I think that wins.
So, how do we convince shoppers, customers to, I don't want to say stop going to restaurants, but go to supermarkets for that restaurant
Yeah.
experience?
It starts at the top. There's really got to be um, executive leadership support that we're going to get into this business because it's a bumpy ride. It's a bumpy ride. So I think you've got to have that support. You've got to continue to market. You've got to continue to show it off in store. You've got to continue to have that quality, consistent quality delivered. You've got to continue to educate your people. But I think messaging, sampling, social media, the social media um, avenue for getting people fired up, getting you in that consideration set, understanding how to leverage social media. That when I'm searching for pizza, burger, salad, I get in that consideration set, which is again a different game than grocers will typically have to play. But first and foremost, you've got to get the menu, the talent, the consistency of delivery. You were talking on another podcast I listened this morning about a pizza that you want to get, and you can't get that.
Right. From
That
Gelson's.
that breaks the promise.
Yep.
Breaks the promise, and that's also where I think folks get enamored with AI, and I believe in AI and use it, but in that case where you're going for the pizza that's not there, AI is not picking that up.
Right.
That store employee is seeing you coming in, should be communicating that.
Mhm.
But you have to deliver on your promise too and put that out there. And there's got to be that commitment, top of the house commitment that we're going to not with reckless abandon. At some point you have to say this isn't working. But you have to stick to it, keep promoting it, and listen to your customers, like the observations, the feedback. What's your customer saying? Why are you walking past that and not trying it? So I think it's continuing to get in front of the consumer, talk about it, sample it, and get their feedback. Intercept. All right, what do you like? Good choice for that.
So, I want to tell you a little story. On Main Street in Santa Monica, there's a guy who bought a smoothie shop. Probably 10 years ago, we had 10 smoothie shops on Main Street. Now there's one. And he really wasn't doing very well at all. All of a sudden, not a paid influencer, but an influencer comes.
Yep.
I think she's 22, does, I don't know whether it was an Instagram reel or Facebook or whatever else. From that day on, there's lines out the door.
Yeah.
Lines out the door for a smoothie. And his big point of difference is the top where the straw goes. He puts a little extra in. So, there's a little dollop on the top of it.
Yep.
And that was the whole social media push.
Yeah.
And now he's doing phenomenal.
Yeah. We it had post Mariano's and another experience that I had, we use social media a lot more. And when you would, it shocked me as a
Baby
sure
boomer.
grocer,
Baby boomer.
maybe we're thinking, when you put the ube latte
Yeah.
on social media, it got exactly the same kind of reaction.
Yeah.
And it's people are looking for experience. So that's a good story, and I think influence social media. But you've got to deliver to the store. That's the
Absolutely.
other. You can create that demand, but you've got to be able to deliver on that demand when shoppers show up.
So, what should restaurants, standalone restaurants, and restaurants be doing in social media? I mean, I see a lot of people taking pictures of food, posting it, but for the most part, it's kind of boring.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, creating engagement with the brand, right? Whether there's, uh, live, maybe there's a live broadcast of, a cooking demonstration, whether there is a chance to, be part of an experience. I think you get a lot of reaction where you can go behind the scenes and be part of an experience or learn about the cheese maker. Over here, we've got Wisconsin cheese, for example. I think how do you learn, educate? People are interested. So I think as opposed to just a picture, how do I create more engagement with the brand?
So isn't that also what the Food Network is all about? Where, we got to look behind the scenes. I mean,
Yeah,
it started with Julia Child,
yeah.
obviously, but we got a look behind the scenes, the personalities, and now Eva Longoria on CNN
Oh,
is doing this fabulous show.
yeah,
Where she's gone to Spain, she goes to Italy, France, and so on. And to your point, you know, what does a local restaurant or a local supermarket do in that same way?
right.
Is it having the deli manager um, talking, the chef in the grocerant, the cheesemonger? How do we do all that?
Yeah. No, I think there's the benefit of social media is we could take those store experiences and bring them to a much greater audience. In the past, if you did a chef demo, if you had a cheesemaker, if you have a winemaker from Northern California, it's a small group of people who may get to experience that. But now with Instagram, Facebook Live, TikTok, whatever platform, you can reach such a broader audience. And if you just tickle them to say, "Oh, I didn't know they
Yeah,
did that,"
yeah,
I think it's a great. I have a son-in-law, millennial, and the other day he's talking about how he's got this recipe to make meatballs. Where did he see that?
yeah.
Exactly what you're saying is, he learned and experienced them. Um, I think people, you talked about COVID earlier. I think since COVID, past COVID, or past it for a while, people want experience. People want interaction. And I think that's what, back to your point, um, create that interaction and that experience as a point of differentiation and a way to legitimize we're in this business, where it's not a flash and we're in this business and you want them involved.
And if I recall correctly, at Mariano's, it was all open kitchens,
Yeah.
so people could see everything. So that gave you a feeling of experience, certainly. I remember, I forgot what it was called, but where the clam bar and the shrimp bar was,
Mhm.
you had real,
Yeah.
fishmongers, if you would, talking about it. Let's jump. And I'm hesitating because it's your old employer, Kroger.
Yep.
What Kroger did is they put everything in the back, and they had, I think it was 4 or 5 different formats. You could go up to one counter and you could order what it is.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything.
No.
It would just come out in a box,
Yeah.
and that's gone.
I I think it's a framing question. When you get into this business, you have to think more hospitality, and we're full of hospitality. Will Gadara has unreasonable hospitality, and I'm sure, and it it's a different business than putting cereal on the shelf, and I did that for a long time, or paper towel. Nobody really wants to see too much about that. How do
Right.
you cut that case in the back? Okay,
Right. Right.
but I want to see those because maybe I want to do that at home as well, and it gives me an opportunity to engage with the customer. And I think from a retailer's point of view, selfishly, I can see what's going on too, right? So I want that interaction with you as a customer. Oh, you buying this tonight? What's the occasion? Birthday? That's wonderful. You don't get a lot of that, and
No.
anymore. Um, I think having the open kitchens, having that interaction provides that opportunity to be differentiated in service. I mean, the bar of service and interaction is not that high anymore.
Right.
So a little bit of, well, hey, those oysters go great with this particular wine we have over here. Have you thought about it's not that heavy, but we as grocers have to teach and help our employees to do that because it's not natural for a lot of employees. So that's also part of the training question that you talked about earlier is you got to train them, teach them, give them prompts. Back to our social media and phones, um, a lot of this generation isn't built on necessarily face-to-face interaction, but it goes a long way if I can make that connection with you. And food is that medium.
In addition to you, one of the people in retail that I really looked up to was Morty Wolfson. Morty was a ShopRite owner at one store. At the time, he built the largest ShopRite in New Jersey. I want to say 65,000 square foot. Um, and Morty would stand by the door of this store.
Yeah.
So one day, I said, why are you standing here? Shouldn't you be up in your office running this multi-million
Yeah.
dollar supermarket? He said, no, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
I want to say hello to everybody who comes in. I want to have a personal relationship. I want to ask them if there's anything that we should be doing better that we're not, or is there any products that you want to buy that we're not carrying? And it goes back to your point about having a relationship, and whether it's a restaurant or a grocery, it's all about relationships. I can count, the number of restaurants that I go to that, the owner or the chef never comes out of the back.
Yeah.
Never comes out of the back. They have, an attractive male or female
Yeah.
host, greeting you, but it's not the same.
Yeah. No, you mentioned Morty, like give credit where credit was due. I would often look at Bob Mariano and say, like, why is he standing over there and watching? And it took me a while to learn the value of that observation and the value of, I said earlier, why did you pick that up? Why didn't you pick it up? What are you buying what do you add to that when you buy that? That could be a potential opportunity for us. So again, AI's got a lot of great value, but AI can't. You and I can kind of read each other's reaction right here, and I think that's something AI can't do. Is why do you grimace when you look at that? Why are you excited and enjoy it? Or so I think that observation with the data is critical. Kind of that's kind of my mantra for the younger generation is marry the two together because there's some things that are missed in either one exclusive.
So for a grocery retailer who comes to the NRA show,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them as they walk up and down these, I don't know, hundreds of miles?
Yeah. Base yourself on eating because it's
Right,
not,
right, right.
that could be too much. But I would say absorb it. Um, look for moments of inspiration. And it always isn't exactly the way you see it here either. It's like a prism. I see that, but now how can I translate that into my story? I think look at where the people are migrating to, like what's attracting folks. So I think being open to it and understand, to use food analogy, you can't eat the whole burger in one bite,
Right.
no matter what the McDonald's and the Burger King CEO is trying to do. Take a bite and figure out what you're going to do with that. And that was back in shameless plug. That's again where folks like me and our firm can help grocers establish a plan and attack and create milestones because it can be overwhelming. So take your time, absorb it in, look for inspiration. Where do you find your inspiration? I think too often grocers are myopically in their own world.
Hmm. Absolutely.
You talk about your experiences eating out at a restaurant. Where do you find your inspiration? I guess that would be a message, Phil, is open your eyes around you for inspiration that you bring back to your business that is differentiated and different than the competitors. Uh,
And with so many competitors, if you look, in my opinion, we are overstored, over grocery stored in this country.
yes.
Um, look into your crystal ball. What is grocery retailing and restaurants and restaurants' future over the next couple years?
Well, I think there's a real, we've talked about it for years, but I think the bifurcation of what these stores are accelerates. You're going to have very much the low cost, lower frills, functional stores.
The Aldi's, the Lidos.
Right. And there's a place, let's not be unrealistic about the economy. And there's a place for that. At the other end, where there's more disposable income and time money value, there's this hybrid, this convergence, I would say, on both sides. the supermarkets and the restaurants with this convergence of grocerants. And I think the models will continue to develop, quite frankly, whether it's done in store, it's franchise. And I think everybody has to find their way, but I think the bifurcation continues, Phil, and to be stuck in the middle is a really tough place to be. And if you- to it's I would say it's harder to get to the grocery run end of the spectrum than the no frills. Now, there's leverage and size that can help you down there. That makes it tough. But um, I think that the grocery run end of the spectrum is a good place to be. But you just have to understand your path, and there'll be different models of that. I think there's different models. You mentioned everything from Erewhon to what we were doing. We could think of, you talk about the ShopRite. We could think about Wegmans and Hy-Vee. So I think there'll be, continued evolution there. And then the other end of the spectrum gets, more cost focused.
So you said that that middle ground, that
Yeah.
typical 40, 45,000 supermarket, is it over? Done? Dead?
I don't think it's dead. I think, the competitive environment around some markets or lack of may uh, loosen them up. But I think it's shrinking. It's shrinking really fast. Shrinking really fast, and costs, as you talked earlier, costs are going to continue to go up. The labor is going to. You're paying fixed rent on a lot of these buildings that are this. The return per square foot continues to drop. So I think it's a murky middle that is dying a slow death.
So let's shift to products. Again, I mentioned before, the Iran war,
Mm,
diesel prices through the roof.
yeah.
Most of our fresh foods have to come on refrigerated trucks, so they're even more expensive to run. We've got climate change affecting where and how we can grow our foods. We've got the labor in the fields where, in California, frankly, a lot of the field workers aren't going to work because they're afraid about getting picked up and deported.
Mhm.
So, what's the future of food?
I think the future of food is strong. We, as you mentioned, we've 35 years. We've seen a lot of peaks and valleys, and I think the future of food is strong. Obviously, we need it. It's a necessary
So, we're
evil.
not going to move to just a pill.
No,
Oh,
because there's no joy in that,
right.
right? I mean, food is where so often food is at the intersection of where joy is, right? Which it's you and I could have dinner tonight. It's with family. It's a celebration. It's a celebration. And a pill doesn't do that,
Right.
so I think food will be there. I think it'll continue to evolve. But things like pills and GLP-1, we've got to pay attention to because that's changing things well. So I think you and I could go back and look at all the challenges that have occurred over the course of time. It's a resilient business with very hardworking, resilient people. And I think the future is bright, but it's a different looking future than where we have.
So, for restaurants or grocerants, let's take a look at brands. And, you mentioned, just putting in a franchise probably doesn't work. But for brands that are out there, and I see more brands on restaurant menus than ever before.
Mhm.
Is that a trend that you think is going to continue, or the same way you described Mariano's and what you did? Should that restaurant be its own brand and really be promoting its recipes and its food? And maybe in California, practically every restaurant that sells eggs, says made with Lily's eggs.
Yeah.
Is that good for the restaurant?
Uh, Um, I think that for the over branded on your menu or in your store, I think becomes a problem because you lose your differentiation. Um, is there a time and a place for some brands? Yes, exclusive partnerships where we're working together to do something different. But otherwise, you lose that point of differentiation that you're trying to create. And to your point, okay, well, these they've got Lily's, they've got Lily, what's okay, so why do I go? Right. And it puts pressure on the rest of your operation for that differentiation because now you're not differentiated by the food, you're the same. So your service got to be really good or your prices. So um I would say that for me, my recommendation would be to be less of the brands and really let's understand what's happening with the brands. It's marketing. It's marketing for them. So, oh, we're gonna, well, this sounds sounds a little like a baby boomer grocer, but it's marketing. You're doing the marketing for the brands, not your brand. But I mark. We'll use the spam hot dog, and maybe that'll be all right. I'm helping promote spam. I'm helping promote barbecue sauce. I'm helping promote whatever it might be. Uh, I'm not building my brand. I'm building someone else. So, is there a time and a place for certain things and maybe hot at this moment? Right. So maybe there's a really trendy item that makes a lot of sense that you want to partner with. But otherwise, you just become another marketing outlet for the brands.
So for restaurants, should they be looking at the success of store brands and using that as a
Mm,
model and saying, hey, what we've seen is we've seen grocers increase the quality of store brands. In some cases, and I'll point to Aldi as an example, their store brands are better than a lot of the national brands that are out there. Is that something that I, as a restaurant or restaurant, should be doing? The facility that comes to mind is Cracker Barrel for me. If I look at the Cracker Barrel restaurants and stores,
yeah.
they do that really well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a brilliant idea, the private label opportunity. Um, for all the same for the restaurants, now for the grocers, sorry, but I think it gives the restaurants a real opportunity to get another occasion. I had a great Cracker Barrel experience, and now I want to have that mac and cheese at home. I can get it there. It builds the brand. It probably grows their it's a margin contributor. It's an extra sale. I have a point of reference in my refrigerator on my shelf. So for all the reasons store brands, private label works for retail, I think it works for restaurants. And you know, I could see like your see some of those store brands in a retailer from the restaurant on a limited basis. Theirs, I think, could be a real value add. If I have a spam dog, I'm building Hormel's brand again. Sorry,
Yeah.
but if I've got Phil's fresh uh, restaurant, right, whatever it might be, you're um, that could be that could be a point of differentiation for me as a retailer. So I think there is opportunities to go back the other way on a limited basis with restaurant brands, but maybe not necessarily the major changes.
So if I'm a grocery retailer and I want to have a restaurant, should I go out and pay the most famous chef in Chicago to come work for me?
No, no. I think there's a lot of wonderful ways to get to culinary talent versus going and get the James Beard award winning chef in Chicago who probably has limited time. I mean, if you're not to build the competency, I don't know that the best chef has the time or necessarily the motivation to help you start a program from ground zero. Now, could you partner with that chef at some point to do the activations to create credibility for what you're doing, or they've got a product? Absolutely. You look at the board out there, Stephanie Iser, some of Rick Bayless. In my past, we've had Rick Bayless and we've had his product. It brings a lot. But does Rick want to sit down and create grocery rod program? No. But are there other folks in the culinary industry that can help you learn this business, shorten your learning curve, understand what matters, I think there's a lot of folks. There's culinary schools, there's hospitality schools, there's folks in the industry who aren't necessarily the big face of the big name. I don't think that gets you there. I would step down a little bit where there is still great talent and they have the time and the desire. They have the time and the desire to really build something, right? If I'm already Rick Bayless,
Right.
I've built this. Yeah, no, here's an opportunity for me to really
He
build.
wants to spend more time in Mexico.
That's right. That's right. Right. But here's something I can build, because there's a lot of folks who've come up working hard in the restaurant food service business, and now you get this opportunity to build. That's a win-win for the store and the culinary, leader.
So you've been so generous with your time. Thank you, Don. Uh, Last question. What keeps you up at night about restaurants, supermarkets, and the food world?
Um, I'd say one of the things that really keeps me up is food safety and sanitation in our industry. And you mentioned a lot of that a minute ago in terms of the challenges getting food, where our food comes from, who's working, who's not working. Um, I think that that is a real concern for us. I think, frankly, Phil, in COVID, we got hyper fixated on COVID and maybe lost some focus on ongoing food safety and sanitation. And you just look at the recalls, the major recalls and we've had them forever. But the significance, the loss of life, um, I think that's a real problem.
And also, not to get political, but now what we've seen is huge layoffs of food inspectors.
Right.
So we have more recalls and we have less inspections.
And you've got pressures at every point to make a profit, and costs are
Yep.
going up. So I think that because it's just so contrary to what food we talked about, the celebration of food and experience. We don't want to put our loved ones, ourselves at risk because of the P&L or the challenges. So that keeps me up. I probably the other thing is that food is a wonderful business, and in today's world, it may not be the most attractive for young folks to get into the food business, right? Tech looks very attractive.
Right. VC. Yeah.
Exactly. But back to your point, was a future of food? We're all going to keep eating,
Right.
and it's a lot of fun, a lot of creativity, and so inspiring our younger folks to get into the food business in one way, shape, or form. I think is another concern.
Well, Don, as always, thank you so much. Your wisdom is fabulous. And again, if you want to know more about Don, go to supermarketguru.com. We're going to post this interview as well as more information about Don there. And if you're a retailer, if you're a restaurant, if you want a grocerant, this is the guy to call. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.